We got a post from 3 years ago, r/exvangelical. As summer is approaching, let's talk about some of those crazy Christian summer camp experiences. What were some of your worst? Here's some of mine. 1. I was in elementary school and went on a girls' camp/retreat, and my cabin leader told us to be careful what you pray out loud because the devil can't read your thoughts, but he can hear you and could use your prayers against you. New anxiety was unlocked. 2. I was upper elementary/middle school age and went to a summer camp. After days of playing hard and being in the sun, I closed the chapel down because I was slain in the spirit on the floor. I went back to my cabin with a few others who were also slain in the spirit at almost midnight. I didn't want to tell anyone because of the praise I got for this, but because I was a child and was at summer camp, I had just fallen asleep. 3. Another night at the same camp, the pastor had talked about your calling. In elementary school, I had so much pressure to find my calling and my purpose, and as a kid with undiagnosed ADHD, I had so much anxiety because I couldn't keep interest in anything, and also I was a kid for fuck's sake. Anyway, I was slain in the spirit again and had a dream about 2 birds leaving their baby bird. I took that as a vision that I was supposed to be a children's pastor. I held on to that for a long time. I was in middle school and had major anxiety about end times. I doubted my salvation daily. I thought if I could get baptized in the Spirit and speak in tongues, then I'd know for sure I was saved. Super problematic, I know. I tried several nights in a row to accept the Holy Spirit. I talked to a leader about it and she prayed with me. I felt so anxious that he was waiting with me and felt so much pressure that I halfway consciously faked mumbling in tongues, then kept doing it until it felt real and convinced myself it was real. 5. Fast forward to being in college. I went with my church as a cabin leader. This was a much less spiritual camp, but although I went to be a cabin leader for the girls I already knew and worked with, I was placed with a group of girls only 2 to 3 years younger than me that were complete strangers, and I was supposed to be their leader/mentor. I tried so hard to mentor these girls and be vulnerable with me as I led them in discussion time. At the end of the week, another male cabin leader approached me and said he had heard through some of his students that my students were really struggling with deep issues, including questioning their salvation. He reprimanded me and basically said it was my fault that they didn't share that with me and that the whole week was wasted because I should have been more involved. I was really into my church camp as a kid. I worked as a cabin mom, a worship leader, kitchen staff, etc. just to be there for extra weeks. I'm still trying to separate the fun from the bad things, but it was the first time I was told women were more sinful than men and more prone to deception at age 10. An old dude told me my cat wouldn't be in heaven with me and got mad when I cried, age 8 or 9. I didn't have any friends one year, and so I set myself on winning the first memorization contest. They didn't do a prize that year because no one else wanted to compete. Sorry. I was forced to wear a t-shirt over my tankini at the pool, age 11. Oh my god. Every cabin was assigned a country, and at the end of the session, the kitchen made food for each cabin from that country, all very Americanized, tacos for Mexico, bratwurst for Germany, etc. Everybody was really curious about what the other tables had to eat, and they all started sharing, which was encouraged by the counselors. Except it was the 80s, and my cabin was Ethiopia, where people were starving, so we had no food at my table, which is kind of F because Ethiopian food is amazing. So we just sat at the table because we didn't have any food to share. Anyhow, at the end of the dinner, everyone had a chance to share what they had learned about the other countries, and when it came to our table, the director took over and spoke about the famine in Ethiopia. So not only did we not get to eat, we also didn't get to talk about it. Then all the other kids felt bad, so they brought us what was left of the food on their plates. Gross. And then everybody felt good about themselves except my cabin, which went to bed silent and hungry. Then when I got home, I discovered that my parents had sent me to camp so they could euthanize my dog. She wasn't even sick, just very old and needed more care. They didn't want to upset me. I'm going to go cry now. Edit. I had a monk mate who was black. She and I started becoming friends until I was told that wasn't allowed to play with her anymore. No one explained why. I have no idea what they said to her, but she just shut down and stopped talking. She spent the rest of camp curled up in a ball on her bunk rocking. I thought she had done something bad, but figured out many years later what was actually going on. I tried to sneak her a cookie and she wouldn't take it. Her name was Charlotte. I really wish I could remember more from my camp, but I was only 8. Like, that hurts, man, reading about kids in like existential suffering and the adults insisting that it's good for them. This is abuse. This is widespread normalized abuse. I needed a job for the summer between freshman and sophomore years in college, and camp appealed because my sister had made our room into hers. I didn't want to sleep on the couch all summer. It also paid more because my church matched camp pay as an incentive. I always loved being there as a kid, even though I didn't believe much anymore, and I thought I could enjoy the good parts and ignore the bad. I ended up being sucked back into things and lost a really good gay friend that I had made at school because I wrote him a horrible letter about how I was praying for him to repent from his sins. Internalized homophobia was extremely damaging for me. I hurt him so badly, and I regret that more than I have words for. I didn't realize how underqualified my camp counselors were to deal with things until I became a camp counselor myself at a secular camp. Some highlights I remember: being left alone in the cabin during the night and early morning so that the counselors could relax. There was often no supervision, and I'm not sure why we never snuck out of our bunks. Maybe people did and I wasn't cool enough. A counselor telling a girl with celiacs in my cabin that she could have a strawberry shortcake ice cream bar because she was pretty sure it didn't have gluten. The girl obviously had a reaction and spent the night in the nurse's office. My cabin completely ousting a girl one year because, and the counselor doing nothing about it because she had a cold and wanted us to pray about it. We were 9 and 10. Me being the one ousted one year and crying, and my counselor telling me I had a higher calling than the other girls. I was 12. 2 girls in my cabin who would regularly tell each other I love you, cuddled and kissed each other on the cheek, and then included me in that, and absolutely no one batted an eye. The 3 of us trying to share a blanket with a boy because it was legitimately 40 degrees outside and being told that it was inappropriate. Having a 20-minute long serious talk with the counselor because I said it was wrong to judge gay people. Them setting probably 100 high school students loose at 11 p.m. in the woods with glow sticks and almost no supervision. Like, I remember playing outside in the woods in the dark. And I was so young, I'm pretty sure I was just following someone. It may have been my brother, but it probably wasn't because I don't think he wanted to hang out with me. But like, I don't remember. I just remember crawling through the dark in the woods, and I think we were playing Capture the Flag. And like, this is not like a bad memory in my head. Like, there's no, as far as I know, nothing bad happened to me at this camp in terms of like sexual abuse or like weird cornering the child shit. Like, everything that happened to me was basically like the program, like the on its face shittiness of just the program itself lying to children and having these assemblies and telling them that they'll burn in hell and that their parents will be up in heaven missing them if they don't throw their lives away on this insane cult bullshit. But yeah, I remember, like, I don't know, it was weird. I wish I could remember more, but I was really young. Our brother cabin going to paintball with us and them sending one girl with 2 boys out into the middle of the woods and only giving the boys guns. Like, what's the plan there? They're just gonna execute her, or like what? Are they supposed to fight over her? Taking us on a night hike with our brother cabin where we weren't allowed to use flashlights. Me reading a book about my hyperfixation at the time instead of swimming because I was too insecure about my body, and that being used as a promo picture of a teen engaging in Bible study independently to this day. Wow. A girl in my cabin buying a thick bracelet at the camp store, and the camp director making a joke to a 13-year-old about if she bought it so she could hide self-harm marks, which she did not have. The whole camp having shower power hour where they'd try and have the counselor shower 10 people in 1 hour. My camp was relatively tame aside from one year where the worship leader declared that we've turned the fog machine in high so you can really see the Holy Spirit around you. Why they had fog to begin with, I have no idea. It was so thick that people were having trouble breathing in the already crowded, hot, un-air-conditioned hall. One kid passed out and another 2 had panic attacks. The leader's only comment, "Now that's the power of Christ! Amen?" Needless to say, I did not return to camp. Our chapel preacher told us with proof that he was absolutely sure Christ would return before the year 2000, so the world was going to end before I left high school, which was completely fucking terrifying. Thanks, chapel preacher. Yeah, this is probably the biggest logical reason to not fear the end times. People have been saying it's today or tomorrow for years and years and years. It's much more likely that tomorrow is not the end times, you know? And I'm also a big fan of, don't call it till it's over. Even if bad shit starts happening, it's not the end times until we're fucking ended. So what does it do to get worried about? Like, a problem's a problem. It might kill you, it might not. It might end you, it might not. Eventually we all end. What is end times? Like, what? You're just trying to scare us. You're trying to scare us for no good reason. Fuck you. Oh boy, where did it begin? I mean, I had several good times, but also forced to bathe in the lake before showers existed in the camp. I was generally not stinky, I used deodorant, by being forcibly submerged and scrubbed. Because I had long hair without the skill to care for it or a shower, my mom put my hair in a very fancy style akin to cornrows that would intentionally not break down in a week so I didn't have to mind it, and I had my hairstyle forcefully ripped out because another girl at camp who wasn't in my cabin had lice and they were convinced I must also have them. I did not. Nor did I have a hairbrush or anything to care for my hair because it was supposed to last the week, and would have. My hair was usually done in this kind of complex, long-lasting style at that age. This was so traumatic that I, to this day, am very wary of letting people touch my hair. I basically will only allow it when I get it cut. I don't let people casually stroke or pet my hair. My then best friend got her period and was too ashamed to speak up about it, and free bled all over everything for most of the week until she finally got brave enough to tell me she'd run out of clean underwear and I'd started my period years ago and had a lot more courage. I don't remember if I gave her pads or talked to the nurse for her, but we sorted it out. I had asthma and it was bad. The nurse refused to let me keep my own medication even though things were triggering me everywhere until we'd come by multiple times a night because I was wheezing and choking so much they thought I might have to go to the hospital. Then and only then did she relent and allow me to manage my own medication because I was annoying her in the middle of the night. How about the time we were separated into boys and girls, and us girls were told about how our bodies could cause men to sin, so we must wear modest clothing, and we would have to have sex in our marriages, but only then, even though we would hate it, it was our job to please our husbands, but only them. Long sleeves and necks only, or we were the reason men sinned. We, if we had sex, were nothing but licked lollipops thrown on the ground, tape that had been reused and lost its stick. The boys were told not to watch porn, I later found out. How about that time 2 boys, the comic pranksters of the camp, performed Can You Feel the Love Tonight for the talent show? Everyone was roaring with laughter because they nailed it, but that night the counselor said it was sinful and apologized and wept, and then canceled talent night forever for the camp in the future because of this grave sin on their part. How about the award plaques they would give us that had a good workmanship award on it that they would pry off the plaque and give you a scarred plaque as a reminder of your sin if you disappointed them strongly enough? They made them with all the awards in place, and if anyone failed to live up to the expectations of all 4 or 5 plaque markers, pried off and banished from camp forever. You would never be allowed to return. How about the people who were made to double confess their sins in case they'd done it wrong? How about the people who were told if they turned from the church later, they were never really saved? Oh, I get that one a lot. People tell me I was never a true Christian. I think I was truer than a lot of them. How about that time I volunteered in the kitchen? They thought I was useless, so they, halfway through, brought in a 14-year-old girl, one of the cook's daughters, who was the age of the campers, to do what I was doing and told me to clean the bathrooms once daily and enjoy the camp. I am still livid for what they did to her. I had numerous breakdowns at camp, like it should have been obvious that there was a problem. Counselors were all supportive and I generally respect those who were there for me, but shit, it should have been obvious things weren't okay at home and no one ever followed up. Well, except for the one counselor who was more interested in her boyfriend counselor than doing things with us, the one who told me not to take part in her soccer activity after I signed up for it once, didn't know how to play soccer, and instead of teaching me, she just excluded me. Bitch, I'm sorry I made a hideously obvious mistake and kicked the ball the wrong way at the wrong time, but couldn't you have just told me the rules of the game? I was often mostly excluded because I didn't fit well with the other girls, though at least there was usually another recluse or two. I was often shamed for my appetite and denied food because they expected me to eat like the other girls and didn't. The end of camp, when we would pass around our books to collect email and phone numbers, I totally heard people asking whose book mine was and being like, oh, and passing on it. It made me so sad I didn't even contact the ones who did give me their numbers, even the one guy I kinda wanted to stay in contact with. I'm sorry, short, angry guy who was shorter than me on the lineup which was required to be by height. I should have stayed in touch with you. Dear Allison, the camper who tore into me for not playing the game hard enough, a person who wanted to be a winner and was stuck with losers like me on her team, and then I broke down and explained I was asthmatic and physically in pain from the amount I'd tried and that I wished I could be as cool and fit as she was, but my body wouldn't let me, who then apologized and offered me Tiger Balm. My gods, your wisdom and kindness still strikes me to this day. I can't believe a teenager realized what they did in that moment. Your actions shook me. I learned something from you. I think it may have been the most important thing I learned from camp, period. This could have been a traumatizing incident where I'd been bullied for my lack of physical fitness, but instead I saw someone realize they were wrong and make amends for it, and do better at just enjoying the games for the fun of it, instead of for the team win afterwards. My hat's off to you. And then they had another comment a little farther down. Yeah, half of the camps I went to where this happened were Awana camp. I do feel they meant well, honestly. I never felt any active malice rolling off of the folks in charge. I have nothing but love in my heart for them in all of their failures and mistakes as well as successes. My Awana experiences were a big ol' mixed bag. I went from Sparkies all the way up and through varsity, further in and further up. Didn't do cubbies, but if it had been an option, I'm sure I would have. Then I volunteered up until the exact moment they told my mom, who had volunteered to help as an Awana secretary for most of my childhood and teen years, whose help keeping things organized and making things happen was invaluable, who'd lost a baby, had a seizure, and lost her license for a year, and fallen into the deepest depression pit, who was on the cusp of finally daring to come back to church the next year. Hey, you can't volunteer at Awana anymore because you haven't been coming to church, and having someone in your role living a life of sin makes us all look bad. Every single one of us dropped out in a rage. At that point, I was mentally prepared to go to Bible college and become either a church leader or the wife of a church leader, so honestly, they fucked up so badly at this point that the cult cracks began showing for me. It was so opposed to everything I'd been taught, I never truly recovered from it. I had some good Awana times and some bad Awana times. I hold to this day the biggest flaw is forced evangelization and forced memorization, and the best part is that it gives kids who might otherwise be stuck at home a couple hours of playing games, singing songs, and doing dumb shit with other kids. I was a keener, so I thrived on the memorization components, but not everyone did. If I had to do it all again, I would, just for the socialization, since I was homeschooled and otherwise didn't get too much of it, though not zero, since our parents actually had some value in things like put our kids into school swimming lessons, put our kids in public violin lessons, send our kids to art lessons where they'll get to be part of contests, etc., unlike some of the other homeschooled kids I knew through Awana who are 100% isolated outside of Awana and church. Worst experience was week-long fear factor. I don't recall how this connected to Jesus, but the final day they made the last 3 contestants search through a kiddie pool of manure for a key to win, and they could not use their hands. The camp closed after that summer, if I recall correctly. I've been going to church camps since I was at least 8. The one I went to from age 13 to 18 I also counseled at for 2 summers. Some highlights include being told to break up with my agnostic boyfriend, now husband, because he wasn't a Christian, hiding from kids as a counselor hide and seek and then telling them to hide so we'd seek them and then we wouldn't. Food relays, forcing 12 or 13-year-old girls to take a shower. Kangaroo court, some kids had put icy hot in a counselor's deodorant and so he made them nair some of their leg hair in front of the whole camp. Made them nair? Bear? Shave? Oh, nair is like hair removal cream, okay. Yeah. Doing embarrassing thing for letters, sing songs, etc. One of the weirdest was guys having to sing "You Are My Sunshine" to girls, and if they smiled, he didn't get his letter. Bonus, wishing the guy getting the mail would come sing to you because you want him to think you're cute, but he never did, and then feeling ashamed because you're not supposed to feel that way, and that good old purity culture. I was a camper for this. One counselor was terrified of lettuce. No one understood, so they made her stand for 10 seconds with a lettuce leaf on her head in order to get her mail. Even as she's standing there trying not to panic, it wasn't until she threw up that the other counselors realized that this was a cruel thing to do. Bible studies, including one about how we shouldn't wear words on our butts. I was a co-counselor at the time and I had worn pants with varsity on the butt the day before. We were told we needed to be better at evangelizing. They used examples of how Muslims are spreading throughout the world and how we needed to do better. Had to stand and sing for songs. Some girls needing to wear shirts in the pool and others not. I think because at the time I super bought into it all, it's hard seeing the blind spots, even for a few years after I still defended it as a good camp, but it's hard to think about now how many youth we might have hurt. I mean, is this one even worth mentioning? A lot of guys in my grade were sexually molested and harassed by a well-known Christian camp counselor. The camp swept it under the rug even after the counselor went to jail as if it was an oopsie, awful situation with dozens of victims, a sadly common story. Why are we still letting Christians do this? Why are we still tolerating the lie that a God exists who would want any of this to happen? That is insane. Got into an argument with a camp counselor who said drinking any amount of alcohol was a sin. I brought up Jesus making wine, Noah drank wine often, etc. She said, those were different grapes. They weren't as potent. Just lie. Why not? You don't know, just make some shit up. Preacher was asking stuff like, who here is struggling in their faith tonight? Raise your hand so we can pray for you. He'd have us close our eyes and bow our heads and say, God bless you for being brave. Thank you for coming forward. We'll pray for you, etc., etc. One day, after years of hearing it, I decided to peek, and he said it like 4 times when nobody was raising their hand. Eventually someone does, but he had a few fake ones to get people to come forward. That's it. They lie to children. They manipulate children. They know you won't fall for this bullshit on your own. They pretend everyone's doing it. They lie. They lie to sell their lies. A camp counselor told us how in frat boy college he watched people give girls roofies and rape them, but he totally didn't do it. He just knew about it and didn't say anything, which I bet anything is total BS. Right, I mean, that's still a bad story if you were just watching your friend rape people, but like, you, Jesus fucking Christ, just knew about it and didn't say anything. Yeah. See, it's probably like a partial confession. He's hiding the worst parts that actually make him feel bad so that you can get all the fucking victim complex and forgiveness credit and all that fucking bullshit while not actually confessing the crime he committed or, getting better. In high school, I went to a Christian camp on an island in the Great Lakes. One night when playing a camp-wide game, one of the counselors fell to the ground, clutching his chest and laid there unresponsive. They used a defibrillator, but he remained unresponsive. He was taken away in an ambulance and we returned to our cabins to pray for the man's life. When we started chapel about 30 minutes later, the main speaker for the night got up and very slowly revealed that it had all been faked and the counselor was fine and never in any danger, but that we need to realize that any of us could die at any moment. One of my unsaved friends that I had invited was incredibly pissed and couldn't stop talking about how messed up it was. I was a dutiful Christian at the time, so I didn't see it. But looking back, it was super messed up and incredibly emotionally manipulative. I ended up being a counselor there myself years later. Even at the time, and even more so now as a hopefully older and wiser person, I don't know how these camps can even function. Literally no one there is qualified. I don't remember even having to do a background check. The camp director kinda sort of knew me from some volunteer work I had done, so I got the job without an interview and with literally no training. I showed up about an hour before the campers did. A lot of the stories in the comment section happen because these camps are literally being run by 18-year-old volunteers who are often more interested in flirting with other counselors than helping out campers. It's only about one step above Lord of the Flies. I enjoyed my camp experience as a camper, but looking back at it now, it's the closest I've ever come to being able to understand what it must be like for people who live in cult compounds. The isolation from the outside, the pressure to conform to the group's expectations, the emotional manipulation of the chapels, and just a general feeling that you can convince campers to do almost anything. Yeah, it's psychotic, the amount of trauma they intentionally inflict on children. They want to traumatize children. That's part of how they control them. It's fucked up. It's built into the religion. It's a traumatic religion. It's a traumatic set of beliefs. It's bad ideas. Stop lying to children. I begged my parents to let me go to a Christian summer camp, and they finally let me when I was 12. It was a terrible mistake. Here were some of the highlights from that fateful summer. Arts and crafts instructor refused to call me by my first name because it was a heathen name. I happened to be named after a Roman goddess. She insisted on calling me by my more Christian middle name. I have never gone by my middle name before or since. Girls in my cabin found my journal on day 2, read it to each other, and used the information within to terrorize me for 2 weeks. They particularly honed in on the fact that I wrote about being lonely a lot. Camp counselors did nothing. Camp counselors made fun of me openly for not being better at sports and said I wasn't a team player since I was obviously so bad that I was making everyone lose. Parents had to bring me a new bathing suit that they couldn't afford because apparently my one-piece modest bathing suit wasn't modest enough since I was growing breasts. When the group went on a hike, I was too slow, so they left me behind. Only one boy stayed behind with me. We got lost, but eventually made our way back to the camp around 8 p.m. as it was getting dark. We had missed dinner. The rest of the group had been back since 6. No one cared or had bothered to come looking for us, although they were aware we were missing. I was turning purple because I had overexerted myself and the nurse told me to stop being hysterical. One cabin leader made fun of my singing and told me that a cat in heat sounded better than me. I was taking voice lessons at the time, was in a youth orchestra, violin, and have perfect pitch. To this day, I still don't understand why she would say this. I sang, and still do sing, just fine. On pickup, day 1, girl got hold of my disposable camera and started making fun of me while taking my picture. What resulted was a dozen photos of me going from miserable to full-on crying. It encapsulated my experience there very well. I spent the next few years going to summer music camps and had a blast. I made friends, no one made fun of me, none of the counselors treated me badly, and everyone called me by my name. I never got to go to a music camp. I probably would have said no if it was offered because I would have assumed it was as terrible as the other camps. We have a Reddit post from ex-Christian. Summer camp trauma. I never considered Christianity as something I was traumatized by because Christianity is so normal and mundane. But now that I'm in my 20s, I'm looking back like, the fuck? I went to a Christian summer camp for 8 years. The elementary school side was full of pretty average camp stuff, except for this thing called the slop bucket. The slop bucket was a combination of all the food that hadn't been eaten during meal times. Literally, we would scrape the food off our plates into the slop bucket. Then, I forgot what we called it, but after evening service, we'd have rowdy fun game time. The games inevitably included the slop bucket, like instead of bobbing for apples in water, you'd bob for apples in the slop bucket. Or sometimes you'd have to drink a cup from the slop bucket if you lost a game, causing people to puke. Looking back, I cannot believe how unsanitary and disgusting that was, plus it prevented all the mildly shy or reserved kids from participating in any of the games. Then came the middle school and high school side of the camp. We played this one game all the time, always at like 1 a.m. You'd hold on to 10-inch ropes and run in a circle with a few empty trash cans scattered here and there. The goal was to jerk people around until they hit a trash can and got out, making the circle smaller. This shit went unnecessarily hard. At least one kid broke a bone pretty much every round, usually wrists and fingers, but sometimes legs. That's multiple kids being sent home with broken bones per day. Pretty much everybody's hands bled from rope burn because you were being jerked around so much. If you let go, you also got out. Each round was easily 100 kids and could last for over an hour, and we'd play multiple rounds a night and be expected to wake up at 7 the next day. Then there was another game we played at night where all the kids ran around in the forest with counselors hiding. If a counselor caught you, then they could literally do anything they wanted to you. This game was mandatory. Everyone would come back to the cabin fucking destroyed, with their hair full of eggs and baby powder, or paint all over their face and clothes, pants full of chocolate syrup or eggs, bloody from falling while running, things like that. Then there was the scandal. A counselor made a kid drink water from the lake, and the kid got a really dangerous bacteria and had to be hospitalized. Honestly, it was fun at the time, but looking back, I'm literally horrified. I feel like there were so many chances of things like sexual assault happening, like we were literally alone in the forest with grown adults at night. Another game was forcing kids to drink as many water bottles as possible within like 3 minutes. It was supposed to promote hydration or something, but what ended up happening is kids would basically dry drown themselves and barf all over the place. And then there was things like getting sick and nobody giving a fuck. One year I felt really nauseous, so I went to lay in bed, and I must have had a fever because I was shivering in my sleeping bag when it was easily 100 degrees outside. It started feeling like a 300-pound person was jumping on my ribs. I walked to the nurse's station alone with my vision blacking out, and the nurse barely cared. She didn't give me anything to drink or any medicine, just had me lay down. I couldn't breathe and my ribs were hurting so bad that I eventually passed out and woke up like 3 hours later. When I woke up, she wasn't even there. She had left who knows how long ago. I scraped together some quarters and got a Gatorade from a vending machine and felt better almost immediately. Looking back, I think I was probably dangerously close to heat stroke, and the literal nurse left a passed out kid all alone. Also, one time we had Bible study in our underwear, and not to mention the stereotypical trauma bonding around the campfire sessions. I don't know. During the time, I felt like all of this was fun, besides getting sick. It felt cool and edgy. But looking back, I'm just shocked and horrified. Why would you make kids run in a circle, jerking each other around to the point of breaking bones and bleeding? Why would you let kids all alone with counselors at night in the forest with the intent to terrorize them? And I don't even remember the context for the underwear Bible study. It's just too bizarre, like the counselors enjoyed the power trip. They liked being the edgy Christians. Meanwhile, they were putting our health and safety at risk. And we have comments. This is horrifying. I'm all for some good rowdy camp shenanigans, but this crosses a ton of lines. I'm glad you made it out. Any idea if that camp is still operational? I remember having a counselor pull me and a friend aside at a camp bonfire one night. She pointed at the fire, asked us if we could feel how hot it was, and reminded us that if we didn't accept Jesus into our hearts, our eternity in hell would be 1,000 times hotter than that bonfire. I guess she didn't know that I would lay awake in my bunk all night, every night, begging Jesus to save me and feeling terrified to my core that maybe he wouldn't hear me or I wasn't asking the right way. Christian summer camps are fucking traumatizing. Thank you for watching. If you have anything you would like me to read, please send it in.